All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here and listening to all these presentations. I've loved hearing everyone's so interesting. Thank you. And this is going to be my third installment in my internship series. So my final presentation of my work with Insight Art for Climate Action, where we work to inspire action and education through implementing YVSC's first art auction and fundraiser. A little bit about me. I grew up in Fort Collins in the Front Range. So I've always loved the mountains and snow, and that's kind of what brought me to Steamboat here. I went to Seattle University and studied art and design and got a minor in environmental studies, which is really where my excitement about combining art and climate science first started. And I moved up to Steamboat in 2021 to ski instruct and be in the mountains and be close to nature. Seattle was beautiful, but I missed that connection piece there. My staff mentors that I've worked with, I'd like to thank Kate Brocato, our communications and program manager, for working with me through the duration of the internship, and then of Dakota Dolan, our internship program manager for this term. And there were so many wonderful partners that we worked with along the way, but especially La Jolla Dulce, who is the host of our fundraising event. So we had the event at their ranch. Thank you to them. And then Jill Bergman was our wonderful resident artist and artistic support for our fundraising team throughout the project. And I realized her piece is right here on the wall, which is so exciting to see that. And then the Steamboat Creates is our local arts nonprofit, and they helped a lot with supplies for the event and also gave me some support on my community mural. And then I'd also, of course, like to thank all of the wonderful local artists that submitted pieces for this event. I didn't have a logo for them, but we had a lot of lovely artists that were involved. Some background from my last two internships and then why we really wanted to create this event. When we're talking about trying to get community members engaged and bringing climate science to the public, I think that art can be a tool for that. It's a way to create engagement and education in a way that is accessible to a really wide range of people. And I think it's also important for people to see a bit of themselves in these issues. So I think that art is a way to do that. And it's one of many tools that we can use to help engage more people. So those are really our founding intentions behind Insight, as well as wanting to create an inaugural fundraiser that YVSC can return to year after year. And so my fall 2022 and then spring 2023 internships, I worked on a call to artists and artist prompts that was the connection point of all of YVSC's climate science, and then bringing that to the artists, so putting it in terms that they could translate into art. My objectives for this term are really event implementation. So bringing all of the fundraising work that we've done over the last two terms to the event July 9th at La Jolla Dulce. I would work with the artists to collect the finished submitted artwork and then connect them with the event. I worked on event communications like social media and blog posts. I would plan and sketch a community art piece to be completed at the event. And I would conduct an artist ethnography, which is a research project around the artists and their work. And then I would continue to support the event planning team, fundraising, with all the logistics behind putting this huge event together. So the event was a huge success, I think. Thank you to everyone that came here. It was July 9th at La Jolla Dulce. We had 27 artists submit original artwork, over 35 pieces we received in the submission process, which I think was a really great turnout for our first year of doing this. The event raised over $45,000 for YVSC in the end, and we had over 180 attendees from the community. There were 30 event sponsors and 45 different auction items, from a dinner at El Son Ranch and backcountry ski with a scientist. We had some really exciting auction items for everyone to bid on. And then out of all the 35 submitted art pieces, 31 of them sold in the live and silent auctions. So I think that was a really good turnout for the artists as well, to support their work and have it sell in something like this. Moving on to the community mural piece, we as a fundraising team wanted to have an interactive art piece of this event. So we wanted to create this for community members to work on when they came to the event. I really wanted to focus on creating an exciting and engaging space to talk about sustainability through art. and that I hoped this mural would bring in different elements of our local ecosystems and really encourage talking about our shared role in caring for these ecosystems. These were the 3 different sketches that I brought to the fundraising team. Through this, I wanted to bring in a lot of different elements of our ecosystems here. So like native wildflowers and the narrow-leaf cottonwood tree, as well as showing ways or integrating ways that community can help support these ecosystems, and in turn, the ecosystems can support community. So in the end, we went with the middle sketch there, and we'll see the finished piece. With the community mural at the event, I wanted to have some guiding questions that people could ponder and talk about while they painted. So my focus one was, how can we integrate sustainability, climate action, and stewardship as a part of our everyday lives and routine? And then I also wanted people to start thinking about how we can inspire other people in our communities to do this action and get a lot of people involved in that way. And thank you to Isabella for helping me facilitate this. These are some pictures of everyone working on the mural at the event. It was so fun to see everybody start painting and get excited about finishing this piece of art. So we have those there. And then this is the final mural that after I finished some of the detail work, we are currently working out where we're going to display this downtown. It's on a material that can be put up on any wall and surface. So we have a lot of options. Right now we're looking at the Diagon Alley mural walk, as well as a new downtown building that Jim Cook is working on that has a lot of other murals completed by local artists that were involved with this event. So I think it would be fun to have it for the community members to see. And I brought it today. It's in the back on a table. And I know a lot of people here worked on it or were involved in the process. So I was hoping that everyone could sign it like in the corners at the end. So I'll have some pens after the presentation. Everybody can go and sign it. So we have all of our names on it. Moving on to the next step of my internship. This relates a little bit to my ethnographic research work. I created a piece called Portraits of a Tree for my own piece submitted to Insight, and I wanted to show everyone a little bit of the process behind that. For the research work, I'm really looking at artistic process and how we can translate a concept into a final piece. And I think looking at the process behind each art piece can show that. So for this project, I first researched our ecosystems here and the trees that are really essential to making up our forests. And I landed on a subalpine fir, an Engelmann spruce, and then a ponderosa pine, because these are all important trees in our forests. And also I really love ponderosa pine bark. So I thought that would be fun to try and recreate. And then my next step was material collection. So you'll see the finished piece in a couple slides, but it's made out of aluminum cans. So I found cans along the Yampa River and in my own recycling bin to repurpose for this project. I also took some bark samples from different spruce trees that I just found on the ground of the forest. And I took bark photos of all the trees. And then I resourced some reclaimed wood from the dumpsters outside of my studio to put these pieces on. The next step was the preliminary sketches. So I sketched out each shape of the tree bark on some tracing paper, and that kind of laid the outline of the shapes for it. And you can see those sketches there. And then I worked on cutting, arranging, and nailing these aluminum shapes together based on the sketches I did, and then based on all the different pictures I took of the tree bark. And then my final step was coloring, painting, and framing these pieces. I didn't have many pictures of this process, so that's more of the aluminum there. And then this is the final piece of all 3 of the tree barks there. I thought that I was able to bring in a lot of different elements of our artist prompts, from resilient land and water area and then waste diversion, to create this piece. And it became a reflection of our forests, and how I think there's a little bit of an education element that can be seen here. At least with me, I've been able to recognize these trees better now that I can point out the shapes that their barks make. And that can be extended in different ways to different people. Like breaking things down by shapes, I think, is a really cool way to look at things. So moving into that artist ethnography, there's a lot here, so I'm going to try and boil it down for time's sake. But an ethnography is a observational and qualitative study of people and their lived experiences. So in this case, it was looking at the artists and then the relationships to the artistic process. My main central research question for this was what is gained in the translation process of science, specifically climate science, into art. So through this, I would look at how the artistic process revealed how the artist would go from a concept to a final work of art. And I would look at how the artist prompts, science, the artist's lived experiences, social and cultural factors are realized in the final piece, as well as how artistic choices like material, size, medium, and display all help to bring all of these things together. My settings and methodology for this, I am looking at people here in the Yampa Valley, specifically all of the artists that submitted work for the event, as well as YVSC staff members that made up the work behind all the prompts, and then the fundraising team that ultimately wrote the prompts for the artists. And the area is the Yampa Valley, so all of our existing counties here, our watershed, our national forests, the different mountain ranges, and the towns and communities that exist within that. And most of my data comes from field notes and different excerpts from conversations. So things like talking to the artists at the event or talking to them around town in different galleries. I used a lot of photos from in-progress work from the artists, studio snapshots. I looked at their artist prompts as a central piece, materials used, and then excerpts from our team meetings. So I'm going to go in a little bit into the artists that I looked at for this event. I really looked at all the artists ultimately, but I pulled out a couple here that I thought really exemplified everything that I'm talking about. So in comparing these pieces, you can see how a lot of different elements from our prompts can be seen in these, and they combined it with their personal connections, reflections, and different states of being in the world. So on the left here, this is Emily's piece. And she started this piece using a repurposed snowboard from one of her siblings in Winter Sports Club. And from there, she was really inspired by our Indigenous history of the land, looking at the Ute tribes and the story of the sleeping giant. So she took inspiration from that and then also related it back to her own relationships with the ecosystems to create this final piece. And she took a very interpretive and narrative approach to this. So the prompts kind of were a little bit of a starting point for her. And then she brought in a whole storyline and created this final piece. The second piece with the bubbles is by Tony, and he was very inspired by personal experiences in his piece. He integrated his own struggles and resilience and reflected that back in relation to our watersheds and the resilience in our land and water. So we're looking, in this piece, he's talking about looking up from the bottom of a river, going all the way through the tree canopies up to the sun and all the relationships that exist within there. And this piece, he took a very abstracted interpretation of the prompts, and the end piece ends up being very abstracted. So that's a little different approach than we saw before. And then the next piece is by Silas, and this is actually a triptych, a three-part piece, and it's the story of a wildfire and regrowth, specifically looking at Colorado's historic wildfires that have happened, this very destructive historic wildfires of the past years. And he has a very special attention to fire science in these, and it was a very literal approach to all the science we presented. And he also, a really cool aspect of this piece is that he created handmade beetle kill wood frames. So the materials very purposefully reflect the issues that he's talking about in these pieces. And so again, he took a very literal narrative approach that has a beginning, middle, and end in his piece. And again, a successful interpretation of our prompts. And then the last piece here is by Laura Tamucci, and she used recycled and repurposed threads from all of her other knitting and sewing projects to make this, and then reflected her process of working with those materials as a kind of a metaphor for the Yampa and how untamable and wild a river like that is. And it came together as a really cohesive conceptual piece, another different approach from the last three that we've seen. here. So in looking at and comparing these pieces together, we can start to see what is gained in the translation process of art to science or science to art. And what was really exciting to me in all of these is that nobody just took one piece of our prompts and like literally drew that out. Everybody combined a lot of different elements and ideas with their own reflections and personal experiences. And so in that, each piece becomes an imprint of the artists. You can see how they are in the world. You can see like their emotional states. You can see how they relate to these issues and see themselves in these issues. And all of those factors play together to reveal the final piece. And each approach, whether it was narrative or interpretive or abstract, I think that they were all really successful in the end in relaying our prompts and supporting YVSC sustainability goals and the science that you all work with here. So my key takeaways and really future recommendations for the next years of insight. I think that this event was a really exciting and successful first year trial that we did. And Michelle in one meeting once said that the threads of this will travel very far. And I think that that's true, is that what happened at that event and planning it and everything is really inspiring and exciting to see. And I think that will travel far and influence a lot of people. So in the future, we're hoping to put together an artist steering committee to guide the artistic process and help bring artists into this event. We saw that a lot of the pieces ended up selling for a lot less than what they were worth, which is kind of the nature of the auction. Like that's going to happen, but I think we should reassess how we're pricing the pieces to make sure no artist leaves like feeling like their piece didn't really sell for anything. For the artist prompts, this really relates back to my research, but I think it's important to find a balance between energizing and educating the artists, but also not to be too restrictive with them. I think we should be selective with the pieces we choose only for space. And like, I don't think we should have too many pieces that there's too much to bid on. I think it's important to keep it like very selective and purposeful. And then we're also hoping to collaborate with a local gallery or organization so that these pieces can be on display for a month before the event. And that way we'll have a lot more engagement and education with them, and it'll reach a lot more people than just having it up for one night at the auction. And I think that'll help to support the event in the future. The other YVSC projects I was a part of for this term was I attended the Yampa Basin Rendezvous. I went to the Climate Action Plan open house, which is awesome. I had such a good time learning about everything there. And then the YVSC staff kickball night. And my personal takeaways, this has been a huge project and it's been really exciting to see it through from the beginning to the end. So that's been just a really incredible opportunity and I'm really thankful for that. I don't have this on there, but working on the mural was a really huge task and I've never worked on something at that scale before. So that was a really good opportunity as well. And then it's really great to see the excitement and interest locally from all the artists and from everyone involved with sustainability about doing a unique project and work like this. I had an increased understanding of climate science and our surrounding ecosystems. Coming from an arts background, that's not my forte at all. So I've loved learning from the YVSC staff members about everything that's going on here in the Valley. I made some wonderful connections within the Steamboat arts community, as well as professional relationships. And then I had a wonderful time working with my inspiring coworkers, the other interns and teams throughout this process. And I would like to thank Michelle Stewart, our executive director, Julia Hubbard, who's worked with us for event planning, Jill Bergman, our Steamboat artist and printmaker, Kate Burcato, Jill Modset from Steamboat Creates, all of the local artists that participated and engaged with this, Kathy Jacobson from La Jolla Dulce, Dakota Dolan, our internship program manager, and Nicole Pepper, our previous internship mentor, who really helped me get this project off the ground. Thank you, everyone. Are there any questions? Yes. Hi.
I think at your last internship presentation, somebody had asked a question about what you were inspired by, and I think that's when you're feeling a little bit uninspired with
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was wondering if through this process and seeing the event to its completion, if your perspective has changed at all.
I think so, definitely. I love seeing how tangible everything is here. Like people are working really hard to make things happen every day in the Valley. And I love seeing that. And I've loved hearing from the other interns as well. Like that's been really inspiring to hear how many different perspectives and unique things that are going on. And with the artists, I didn't talk to a single artist that didn't feel inspired by this work or wasn't just very, very excited to participate and put everything they had into doing this. So I think the good people are out there and the good work is out there, and it's really, really wonderful to see that. Yes, Emma.
It has been really something about like we're talking and the genre has a good way of phrasing it, and it doesn't make sense all the time, but we talked a lot about how I guess the artists use the climate science to create their work, and I guess I was wondering how well you felt that the science and the art then translated to educate like the audience who doesn't have a background in either art or science, and if I guess you saw that at the auction or like what were maybe like the key things that you think helped that, or if maybe you didn't see that so much, like what do you think would maybe be the next step to then help like educate a broader audience who isn't involved in science?
That's a really good question. And I was hoping that would be a really central part of my research, but I feel like that was a little bit lacking. I didn't talk to too many event attendees specifically about that when I was at the event. And I think that with the nature of the auction and the venue we had it at and the setting, it was very, very hard for people to read the artist statements. And that was really the key education point to understanding what their piece was about and like all the different elements that they drew into it. So in the future, we're hoping that doing something like a month-long gallery show with the pieces would help with that education piece a lot more, because I think that piece is there and people are having really, really good conversations. But just with the timing of everything and everything that was going on at the event and the amount of time people had to engage with the work, I don't necessarily know how successful that was, but I think just with what was going on going on at the event in general, there was a lot of talk about sustainability and direct action. So I think it both was successful, but there's a lot of ways that we could work to improve that next year. Yes.
It was a great job, by the way, former event planner, and I know how much work went into that. That is really, really, and I went to this event, and it was really impressive.
Awesome, thank you.
The one thing I was thinking while I was there, because Tom and I have been to other events, similar fundraisers, where you can get it all on an app. And that silent auction, that no money goes up so fast. People are sitting there. So I don't know the cost that goes into that. That could be a determining factor, but maybe the brochure goes away and it's all on the phone. Because only if you have the bandwidth when you're at the event, people will be doing that. But that was just one suggestion, but really good job.
Thank you so much.
As you know, it's home a beautiful painting and
awesome.
Everybody loves it. So,
awesome, that's great to hear.
The artist, she came right up to us, and that was great.
Great, that's great. Yeah, we're hoping that having the artist there would be a good connection point. Yeah, definitely. And we've talked a lot about that element of it. We were missing really a lot of technology for this first year, I think. And we had talked about doing an online auction at the beginning of everything, but with the time we had, we couldn't really put it together. But I think in future years, that's going to be a really important aspect to bring into it. Yeah. Any other questions?
This is from Michelle here. Wonderful job, presentation, and overall contributions to our community's expanded relationship between climate action and art. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you heard the artists say about their own potential first or new experience creating a piece of art with the intention of communicating the value of media and climate action? Would you say the experience or act activated them in new ways? And do you see any opportunity to use the arts or the process of creating art as a way to connect more broadly with the public to activate them in climate action?
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Wonderful questions always. In terms of the artist, I was surprised that a lot of the artists were already doing work in this sphere. A lot of their art was already informed by what's going on here in the Yampa Valley environmentally. I think just because of the nature of where we live, a lot of people live here because they love our ecosystems. I had some really interesting conversations specifically with an artist that is from the Bahamas who was talked a lot about how he had been doing similar work back home. And when he moved here, he wanted to do something where he was talking about the environment through his art. So I talked with a lot of artists about how they had previously done this in their work, but I think this event was so intentional and very pointed for that end goal that a lot of artists hadn't had experience with that before. So I think that was the new piece for the artists. Everyone that I talked to was really excited about getting involved in future years and being a part of this event and continuing to do this work. And I've had a lot of conversations with people about doing other gallery shows that are similar to this, or just continuing this on in other ways throughout the community. For the second half of the question, you may need to reread it. I forgot it.
Let's see. And do you see any opportunities to use the arts or the process of creating art as a way to connect more broadly with the public to activate the climate action?
Yeah. It's a great question. I definitely see a lot of value in doing this. Even throughout my internship, I did some different projects with kids, and like the aspen tree project that I did was, I think, art-based, craft-based, and then as well as the I cut out pieces of paper and did this big collage of different parts of our ecosystem for Earth Day at the base. And I think if anything, it's a starting point of conversation. So if the connection point is over art, you can move on and have further conversations from there. If everyone's doing something communally, doing something together, it's a great way to bring people together and talk about these things. It's difficult to put into practice, but I think that there's a lot of value here in a lot of ways, and we can explore a lot of different avenues with this. Thanks.
This question is from Nathan Stewart. Wonderful presentation, Marguerite. Powerful example of art as engagement in co-creation and expanded awareness of climate action. A comment or reflection here. Art, like science, so often feels exclusive given how we teach and experience art in the US. Your approach to art and science and the first inaugural insight break this barrier in so many ways. Keep up your impact work. That wasn't the question, but and then there's one more question here from Rachel Long. I love your passion for combining art and the environment. Very cool to see the different and unique approaches each artist does. You seem to have a knack for fundraising events too. Do you plan to continue in the nonprofit realm with fundraising events throughout your career? In other words, what's next for you?
That's a great question. I honestly wish I knew what was next for me in a lot of ways, but I've never worked with a nonprofit before, and I absolutely loved it. I thought a lot about doing this kind of work in college, so it was great to have the experience of working within one and seeing how they manage and work. So I definitely see myself working with more nonprofits in the future, and I think just with my values, that's kind of where I lie. But we'll see what's next for me. Yes. Awesome. Thank you.